that thing. I'm historically just a huge fan and lover of Barbara Streisand. So anything that affects the Barbara Streisand cinematic universe, obviously I just really care about it in really intense ways.
The
Steven
Barbara
Sondheim,
Streisand
yeah,
cinematic universe.
she sang a song by this gentleman Stephen Sondheim, who's passed away. So as one degree of separation from being sad, rest in peace to a person who worked with Barbara Streisand. That's what I got. Listen,
It's brutal.
So I saw some posts about Steven. Is there any industry that has a singular statesman like Stephen Sondheim? This is such a loss, blah, blah type of stuff. And the funniest shit that I saw was some people comparing it to Stan Lee. And I was just like, no. Stan Lee
Kind of, though.
was a part of an industry that actually reached like billions of people and like is insanely popular and has like an independent version of itself that is actually able to be successful because it's so popular. Stephen Sondheim is a part of musical theater, a playground for rich people that barely exists. Like,
yeah, I mean, listen, the world of theater, boy, you thought people in DSA were fighting over nothing. Go check out your local stage production. You will find a lot of very high-strung people fighting over utter total irrelevancy and their right to be the least relevant person in a non-relevant room. You're off Broadway. How important can it be?
Joe, you and I have both done plenty of community to like low-level professional theater, each of us. How often have you been paid even minimum wage to do that shit?
Never.
Never, right? Like the
below
most
minimum wage for sure. But if you take in the hours that we did and compare it to the time we spent on the production, time we spent helping out extra, just because like we were lacking technicians at certain points, and that was before COVID. Like, it's weird to say, it's almost like vaudeville a little bit. It's kind of rotting at the seams before it even started. Which is sad, because I know a bunch of people that have a degree for stage acting. And I mean, I honestly don't think it's just for stage acting. It should be just for performance in general, because I know people who do those productions go on to do different things. They don't always end up in theater. They could be a lawyer, they could be whatever they want to
Very
be.
few people end up in stage theater, it turns out.
And look,
The
very
most
few
I've
people.
ever been paid for a stage performance is $500. Now that sounds like a lot for one performance, and it kind of is in some ways.
But I was naked half the show.
No,
go ahead.
just the sheer number of hours of practice that went into something like that, though, it's less than minimum wage when it's all said and done. You know, you spend hundreds of hours preparing for that performance.
Sometimes even your own money, by the way.
Yeah, also some of that money goes into like your costume sometimes. A lot of community theaters, they're like, show up looking like this.
Bring your own shoes.
Bring your own shoes and shit.
Can you imagine getting a part just because like you're the only person who has the costume?
I've heard of shit like that.
Hey, listen, he's the only guy here with a cape. He's got to play Tybalt. He's got the cape and the rapier. This is how it's got to go down.
You can't afford a rapier. Oh.
We only know one guy in town who owns a monocle.
A small city theater. Oh, that'd be so sad. We don't have Amazon, but we have this guy that lives down the street with a monocle.
Definitely small town theaters are always hounding you for your weird shit. That is a thing. Like, they will be putting out these postings like, does anyone in town have a working gramophone that we can borrow for 6 months? And you're just like, what?
That's wild. I've never really thought about that.
Well, it is a small world, but how does that affect? I mean, do you kind of feel like there are other smart people in musical theater who aren't getting their due? How do you feel about, the passing of Sondheim and
No, I think musical theater is one of those things where like people talk about like all of the undiscovered geniuses that like are lost to capitalism. That's like the people that could be writing great musicals mostly move on to something else, like Joe was saying a minute ago. Like there's a guy out there right now who could be the next Sondheim, and instead he took a really cushy job with a financials firm because that was way better than fucking getting yelled at by the community theater group for $3.75 an hour.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I totally get that. I don't think there are a lot of like homeless people with degrees in musical theater. I could be wrong. I think just the fact that you're getting a degree in musical theater means somebody in your family is looking out for you. I don't know. I don't know a lot of people. Man, I worked at UPS, 12 hours a day,
Actually,
saved my money, and got that degree in musical. Hey, if
Actually,
you are,
my-
come on the show.
my partner has a degree in musical theater. You know what else she has? Student loans she'll never pay off, and a 10-year career in the food industry, and she's now a professional chef instead.
That'll do it.
Because she's an actual working class person, and but like when you're young, people just trick you. Oh yeah, follow your dreams, and so she thought she could do it too, maybe. And then she discovered that, oh, actually, only the rich kids are making it into these jobs.
Yeah, everybody, please remember, dreams are fake. They're illusions. We're in a nightmare.
That's not the message we want to send.
We live inside the depths of a nightmare that we can never escape. Welcome to Velvet Butcher Shop, hosted by Joe and Kennedy.
What an intro.
Yeah, how's it going,
A
y'all?
hard touch on soft subjects.
That seems like the opposite.
That's our
Listen,
tagline.
Yeah, I know. Usually it's supposed to be the other way around, but
we're kicking off week 2. We can play with the branding as much as we want. Is this a velvet cake that we're butching, or is this a meat in the form of velvet?
we're just chopping up that expensive fabric,
Oh, okay. I love it. Other side, Steve, have you worked in theater?
Yeah,
Or are you just saying
what did you have
following
to give
passion in
up?
general?
I can relate a lot. Like I'm trying to now in my 30s sort of reclaim some of my dreams a little bit, and like doing this show is a part of that, doing some of the other shows that I have been doing or have done. Again, same kind of path, but that's only the last couple of years. After 10 years of basically just giving up on all of my dreams.
Yeah.
Because I was too broke.
It's kind of what it feels
Like, the people that I know that were able to like make something out of their college band or whatever. One of the bandmates had a parent that just paid for that band to just exist for a couple of years or something like that. And that may not be millions of dollars, but it's still something.
Playing D&D. I love
But hey,
that.
listen, at least D&D is fun though. But yeah, I feel you. I gave up a lot of things similarly. And yeah, theater is one of those things that you pretty much have to be bankrolled to make it in theater.
I mean, sometimes. Other times it's just like you need to have some sort of funding or passive income that's along with it. And usually that passive income is a family member.
Yeah, again, it's the same.
So you're saying you have to either be bankrolled externally or bankrolled by yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like, how are you going to do that as a kid? Like going into college? You're not.
Honestly, yeah, for most people, realistically, as crazy as it sounds, you have a better chance of making it in screen acting.
Yeah.
Like you literally, I know some people that work background,
Sure.
in movies. that are
Strictly
just like
background, you can
regular
get a lot of
folks.
roles. Or like just ads.
Yeah, just working background and ads and stuff. Like, and like you can make it into something like that if you work real hard and are dedicated to it and blah blah. But yeah, theater? No. Musical theater? Heck no. Musical theater is so anachronistic that it's amazing that it's still around. Like, if someone was like, I'm going to see a fencing duel.
Well, I mean, I feel like it's still part of the arts in a way, but in that sense, why is it so expensive to go see these things?
Well, everything is it's getting more expensive to go see anything. I mean, just public spaces, real estate, stuff costs money. Even the movie theater, it's got to pay their rent, right? So
That's fair, but like I feel like these prices are jumping so exponentially, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah,
Buying a
you
pack
remember
of
when a
cigarettes
band
is
shirt
a pain in my wallet every time.
mhm.
Remember when a band shirt used to be like 15 to 40 bucks? Now it's like
$5.
35 to 80.
Yeah, band shirts. I mean, once the bigger artists got into, Spotify, you're it's nothing. Like it financially doesn't exist. You stream something 24 hours and it's like sending someone 1 cent. So now that music is now, by the value of the free market, completely devoid of any financial value at all. Now it's shirts are high fashion. Uh, I remember Astro World having its own fashion line that was attached to it. Do y'all remember that?
Yeah.
And it was, once you buy the album, you've got to buy 5 different shirts. And Kanye rolled out his own ugly ass shirts for when his last album came out. Yeah, it's just that's how they stretch the money out, and they pass it on to the people who's dedicated enough to buy a freaking fashion line to go with an album drop. Just the most hardcore fans. And hey, they're subsidizing the artist, and maybe that's just how things should go. I don't know.
Yeah. Donda was really the ultimate, like, I don't know. I actually really respected Kanye for trying to like do something different and more modern with the experience of releasing that album, because it's obvious that like the old way doesn't work anymore. So like even if you want to ridicule some aspects of how he did it or whatever, like at least he was thinking outside the box at a time when obviously you need to um uh like I don't know. It's a very interesting thing, but it's like, yeah, like if everyone's just gonna stream Donda and you're gonna get like $5 at the end of the month for like 10 billion streams, you might as well like launch it in a stadium and make people pay hundreds of dollars for the very first listen. Fuck it. It's insane, but it makes a sort of sense given how like bad things are.
Yeah, I think artists just across every field are thinking more about how they're going to monetize their work or even get anything out of it. Because typically, just all of these sources, I mean, hey, you want to be a theater actor, they're paying you nothing. You want to stream.
Or very
We
little.
talk about how all of the streaming income for large artists comes out to nothing. And you can think of like mid-tier artists like Martina Diamantis that are just like getting memed on by their own fans. Like, yeah, our favorite artist is broke, really stream to throw her a few extra pennies, and she gets annoyed. Like, I don't want all my fans to think that I'm broke. Well, sorry. So you've got that in music. Theater, wrestling, they're going on the road for $10 a pop. Different tours, actors, they're getting pennies too. So, like, how artists squeeze out money has to be more creative and more about passing on the fandom to the people that are more committed as fans. I mean,
Yeah.
we have a podcast, and We're
Well,
on Patreon, right?
We sure are. Yeah, Velvet Butcher Shop or Ko-fi, your choice. You can have Patreon or Ko-fi.
Do I get a cut? Do I get a cut of any of this?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought we were just gonna.
Cut of
I thought you were gonna be like, no, you're hustling, you're making it. Yeah, this is
cut of
you
nothing?
gotta grind. That's what you should have said.
A cut
No,
of velvet?
if we can make real money off this show, we will pay everyone for their appearances because
Yeah.
we're nice like that.
Oh,
But right now we make $9 on Patreon. So shouts out to Inkjet, our one patron. Yeah, you have to think about like there's an economics to this that like doesn't exist anymore that a lot of artists used to rely on to sort of make their art. Where
right.
like if you were a musician and you were trying to sort of break into music and you were able to make an album that sold like 50,000 100,000 copies, and that was like $15 a pop or $13 a pop or something like that, and you get like, I don't know, maybe $8 of that or whatever, that's like enough that it's like, okay, we made some decent money, we can pay all the band members to work on the next album, pay for the studio time, pay for all of our expenses, and actually like do a proper tour and work on the next album. And that was how like a lot of like semi-independent musicians, part of how they survived. Now obviously the tour was still worth more even back then in general, but still, like if you could sell, you know, even just a few 10,000s copies of an album at a decent price, you could make enough money to finance doing the band for like another year or two and making another album.
Yeah.
And Spotify doesn't give you that. Spotify fills up your gas tank, maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah, depending on like what kind of car you're in. If your
Yeah.
parents have bought you an electric car, maybe you're getting
Tesla.
like the cash off of Spotify is like, I know people that are in music, and boy, it's revolting. And I guess like the it's been such a win for the consumers. It's not like we're all, first of all, people just don't have enough favorite artists really to put that into their lives. And I think that, and maybe I'm just old, but music is, you know, I don't know if people are discovering music in the same way that they were. I'm not a hardcore Spotify head, and maybe they can say, yeah, I've got 10 new favorite bands and I buy their albums. You guys remember when we had those discussions when we were in our early 20s and we had these conversations about like piracy? And I think that like you did find bands and you did want to follow them, but I think maybe now it's harder to do that, and there's maybe less of it. But that's something that we can follow up on later.
Well, it's harder to
Talk to
sit
some-
through all the bullshit.
There's so
honestly,
much
I
of it.
feel like.
And also those systems, like those algorithms have changed
so
in the last few years to be like more funneling to the same 30 people that you know about. It's much harder to find that stuff.
Yeah, that's what concerns me as much as anything. When I was in like high school, especially, like me and my friends that were real music heads, we put a lot of work into like trying to discover new music, you know, reading about shit, like going on forums and blogs and, you know, reading music mags and all that stuff. Yeah, it was a task. And I appreciate the ease in some ways of finding stuff on Spotify and YouTube and SoundCloud and services like that. But yeah, there is this funneling effect. So yeah, it's pretty
it's rough, and it's super rough. And I think we see that again. Visual arts are dealing with that, and unfortunately, in the same way that, you know, we had Sondheim pass, you know, this week, the people who are recognized as the real mainstream artists are getting older and older, and so are their patrons, because there's a completely different economy if you're under the age of 35.
Yeah.
It's very
Well,
true.
this is Velvet Butcher Shop. We're gonna cut to the intro music, take a quick
Intro
60-second
music.
break, and when we come back, we'll talk about maybe method acting or maybe the Screen Actors Guild or something.
We can talk about
Yeah.
method acting. I am really interested in what's going on in SAG because
There's
your
been a lot of changes. It's been very interesting to watch. I know one of the representatives for Oregon, and he's been saying it's literally crazy. Like, it's crazy what's been going on. I mean, Fran Drescher, I'm pretty sure, is our president now of SAG-AFTRA. I don't know.
Tell
There's a
people
lot of changes coming.
Yeah,
when we get
so-
back, talk about the political implications of the nanny being the boss at SAG-AFTRA. That's a great hook. We'll come back in a minute, and that's when she became the union rep. We'll talk soon. All right, listen.
So Fran Drescher is SAG-AFTRA's next president. A girl,
No, I
boss.
mean, she is the current.
Or has that already taken effect?
Yeah,
Taken effect?
she beat Matthew Modine. So I want to
Yeah.
know the whole, Biden versus Trump, Batman versus Superman. Tell us the political ramifications because, like, to the average person, that was a decade ago. Talk about who these folks are and what the political ramifications of all of that voting is.
I mean, political wise, I feel like it wasn't really anything close to the drama that was associated with the Biden election. But I feel like a lot of it was based on how much she's accomplished as a person. She's very talented. She's well read. She's probably one of the older standing members, so she has the experience and the wisdom to lead SAG-AFTRA into a new age, because there's been suggestion of a lot of corruption supposedly. I didn't hear this from the rep. I looked this up a while ago and was just kind of wondering what's actually going on in the background. There's been a lot of disputes across the board with some of the new issues that have arisen with COVID. Some people have been called out for using older methods that are really frowned upon for casting and a few other things. I feel like a lot of the union is going through renaissance right now, and it's been a rough renaissance so far. And I mean, Fran Drescher's been holding up, still carrying through for us. I feel like a lot of the actors I've heard from that are SAG-AFTRA certified, they've had issue with the new development of the influencer agreement. Have you guys heard about this at all?
I do want to hear more about the influencer agreement. If you have anything else to say about the the party, the dueling groups inside SAG-AFTRA. I'd love to hear anything else you got on that before we talk about the influencers. But it's super interesting. But if you don't know
if there's like a dueling group, I feel like there's a bunch of different sects that are in there,
right?
Depending on like
what
background, really.
What are they arguing over? Because I read some stuff about it, but it seemed like the groups seem to mostly be in unison. So do you know what their points of contention or friction are?
I think the only like main contention for a lot of people is pay, and basically what is keeping somebody safe on set. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of changes to basically, if you're using union workers, they need to like have some sort of rep on set, because after that shooting with Alec Baldwin, there's been a lot of silence, I feel like, from SAG-AFTRA, and I feel like they're stewing on some sort of idea. But who knows? I really don't know what the future holds for this union. I'm really hopeful. It's hard to say. I feel like Fran Drescher's doing her best with what she's got. There's not really any real contention between the different groups, I feel like, other than pay. Basically, who's getting what, the Screen Actors Guild, if they're getting paid or not. Like, everybody's got to pay their dues to the union as well, which is another part of it. But that's a yearly thing, or monthly, depending on what your situation is.
All right. Well, tell us about this influencer stuff.
Yeah, let's talk about these influencer agreements, because that's spicy.
Yeah, this has been an interesting development recently about influencers. Basically, people who use platforms like TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Snapchat, or Pinterest, like stuff like that. Anything like that. If you have followers in the hundreds or the 100 million, apparently they provide marketing opportunities for these people now. SAG-AFTRA, that is. Which is kind of interesting because they're trying to get in on this new market that's already been out for a long time and has not unionized for some reason. Well, we all know the reason. There's some really shady stuff that happens on some of those sites. Anyway, it's gonna vary like between each influencer, as is, with the like rate of pay and whatnot. But from what I understand, it's basically having a little bit more insurance for yourself. But I don't think a lot of people are really happy. Like, some actors are not happy that their union is kind of being quote unquote poisoned with these this new group of people.
Yeah, well, having influencers in the union change the political character of the organization, or is that seen as something that could happen?
That's been a big point of discussion. And it seems like a lot of people are leaning towards the idea that influencers should be a part of the union. But there's still groups that are out there that are just like, they don't do anything. They take bits and reuse things. Like, there's got to be something in there in one of these contracts about like an NDA of like, or not an NDA, what do they call it when you use somebody else's material for your own and don't credit them?
Yeah, there's definitely some
Plagiarism?
weirdness with
That's not the
that.
word.
There's definitely some weirdness with that you'll see on Twitter sometimes. Where like, I mean, a lot of people on Twitter are legit like posting stuff that's original or semi-original, and you don't have to be 100% original and everything. Don't get me wrong. I post memes that I see, etc. Like,
But the
you know,
TikTok videos where you're
but
singing
yeah, the
along to a
people.
song.
No, even worse than that is just like there's whole Twitter accounts that are just like, damn, this TikTok is crazy. And then just
Yeah, I know.
post someone else's TikTok that they spent hours fucking developing. And like,
Yeah,
that's all they do.
there are. I think we've joked about this, but yeah, there are definitely Twitter accounts where they just go on TikTok, video gets engagement, and they're reposting. And look, there are lots of people on Twitter. You could argue that they're providing a valuable service because there are plenty of people on Twitter who are like, I'm never going on TikTok. All they're going to do is steal my data. But they'll laugh at a TikTok if it's presented to them on the media outlets that they already use. But like, are you now an influencer and you're now like getting an endorsement deal off the fact that, and we're going back a level because we're talking about the TikTokers originally, but like you're getting an influencer deal, the fact that you're like dancing along to NSYNC songs. What are we talking about here?
But at the same time, like, there are plenty of people who get into SAG-AFTRA just because their dad's rich and gave them a speaking role in The
In, like, one of their
Hangover as
cartoons.
bartender number 6 or whatever.
And also, the barrier to entry for dancing along to NSYNC songs is obviously lower than the barrier to entry for, you've got work requirements in SAG-AFTRA.
Oh yeah, there's quotas you got to meet.
And I'm
like,
sure those
yearly.
quotas will still exist for influencers, but
Well, what it says on the fact sheet that I got was that they'll be bound by like the same rules as other members, where they will have to pay their stipend to SAG-AFTRA, and they'll get the same benefits as well, which is the pension as well as the health benefits that come with being in SAG-AFTRA.
That is cool.
So it's not like I think the thing with the groups of people who don't want the influencers in SAG-AFTRA don't understand that, because it seems like they feel like they're going to start stealing their roles. Like I know there's certain influencers who have gotten jobs based off of followers, like speaking roles in shows or a series of some kind, or at one point a movie, apparently, because of their followers that they had built up over time. Like, they spend time doing this. It's just that people don't understand the work that goes into it is just different.
Yeah,
It's a
I think
different
people
level of
always
work.
look at those crossovers and think they come easy. But like when Shaq decided he wanted to be an actor, he put a lot of work in. Little known fact.
Everybody in the game can't make Shaq food. That's some really rare shit. Not everybody has that level of talent. And listen,
But legitimately, Shaq had some stories of kind of being turned down at first, because people were like, yeah, you might want to act, but you don't really know how. And he dedicated himself to it like he had dedicated himself to basketball. He put in hundreds of hours, thousands of hours, really, even, of like
Kind of
training and shit so that he could actually get to the level of like starring in movies, because that's what he really wanted to do. And I think people forget that like those crossovers do take a lot of work, that like if you see an influencer jump into real acting, they're probably doing a lot of shit behind the scenes to like make that happen. even if
probably
it
got an
seems like it
acting
came
coach as
to
well
them
as
really
like
easily.
multiple voice trainers. It could be anything.
And
But
here's a little secret about being an influencer is that you want to make it seem like things come easy to you in life. Like that works well on social media when you're just like, haha, yes, I fucking scored another big one. Like it was no big deal, because that makes you look impressive and shit like that. And so a lot of people, now there are people who also emphasize their hard work, and that can work for people too. But for a lot of people, they just lean into the idea of like, yeah, I scored another contract, and they don't talk about all of the like things they were turned down for in
like
between
how
that,
many roles they had to
right?
go through, rejections, and like
Exactly.
people like, I'm not gonna be dramatic about this, but like there's points after an audition or like a callback where you're just like, I fucking did great on that. Or like you're like, damn man, I screwed that up so bad, I'm never getting called back. But when you get that callback, or you get that role, or you don't get that role, you have the same reaction as every human being would. I'm either disappointed or I'm fucking excited. And I don't really know how people can judge other people when they don't know the full story. It's hard to deal
And
with.
and given that we literally in our previous segment, and welcome to Velvet Butcher Shop if you're new to the show, Kennedy and Joe are our regular hosts. I just come when I feel like it. We talked just a lot about how the economy was just changing for all of this stuff for creators.
Yeah.
And whether you are an artist that's tied in with a gallery, or you are an actor that's doing musical theater, or you're on TikTok, or you're a YouTuber, the financial payouts from whatever patron organization you thought was going to come here on high to rescue you is drying up really fast, and people are really looking for other places to be. And obviously, like, we don't know how many people are going to join SAG-AFTRA off the back of TikTok, because we don't know what the numbers
good
exactly are
question.
going to be like. But like, obviously, whenever you open organization to anybody, it does have an impact on, number one, the political character of that organization, and number two, and this is also important, so we shouldn't look at what SAG is doing as just like an internal political move, although like there is a little bit of that.
Yeah.
It also has an impact on the politics of that group. So maybe it's also important for SAG-AFTRA to reach those people, because just like every other organization that exists, it's getting older, and there needs to be like a real reach out from every legacy institution to say, hey, how are you adjusting to how workers and working people are living right now, and are you reaching out to them? You know, Joe, I'm looking at this stuff that you've sent from your own docs, and you feel free to share that, or Kennedy can. I've talked enough.
I'll just paraphrase this. So basically, right now, only influencers who perform alone can sign the influencer agreement, which is kind of a weird provision, and there's no exact minimum for entry. But they have to produce their content themselves with no involvement by any third-party entity, and they
That's
have
the
to
part.
own their shit. A lot of that seems like pretty restrictive, and like the only people that are going to get in are the people that are already so successful that they can afford to own their entire empire, right?
I think part of that is, in order to qualify as a working person in this working union, you can't have like a pit of slaves that's being your video editor. I think that's probably, like, there was probably some internal discussion of, there are people who are the face for like a large staff.
Yeah, but like if you're an actor in a traditional film, what are you?
Yeah,
Literally,
that's true,
there's going to be a whole pit of video editors that you never even meet. At least the
You're gonna be
YouTuber
PAs
knows his
getting you
editing
coffee that
guys,
you don't know.
maybe.
Yeah, but if you're working for a third-party organization that has their own pit of editors, I bet that's a different relationship. You know, those editors in the docking bay at Disney don't work for Scarlett Johansson. They
Yeah.
work for Feige, so it's a little bit different.
It's a little different, but I still think, I don't know. I think
No.
some of this is set up to.
It is a bit gatekeepy, but I'm sure that there was an internal negotiation about that too.
I wish they
They
had
did
just set
specify
minimums.
this is just for right now, by the way. Like
Yeah.
it will change in the future. This is something that developed during the pandemic. So the context of it needs to be taken lightly, I feel like. But at the same time, with the third party thing, that means no meme queens, no like meme kings or whatever. They're not going to be able to get on there because their content's going to dry up unless they create original content. That's what these people are looking for, is original creators.
Yeah.
It feels like that's literally what they want out of this agreement. It feels like.
So SAG-AFTRA, if you're watching, this is my own unique solo performance every time I speak. No, let's talk about, while we're talking about performances, this is a topic we've been putting off since the beginning of this show. Let's talk about method acting a little bit. While we're talking about acting and roles, things of that nature.
Do you want to hit a break before we break down all of this, or you want to slide right
Yes.
into it? Okay.
No, we're gonna slide right into it.
All right.
This show's gonna end in like 20 minutes. We don't need another break. So method acting is, I guess, a thing. Joe's gonna defend it. So we got I'm on the negative side, and Joe is gonna defend method acting. This is an informal debate starting right now.
Can I just be the instigator in that case?
Yeah.
I would love, let's just talk. BuzzFeed wrote an incredible article about how Lady Gaga's just channeling her personal trauma into House of Gucci. And I will just say, hey, she was assaulted as a kid. And she quotes, "I took the pain I felt from being attacked when I was a young girl, from feeling left behind by people I love, from feeling trapped that I can't go out into a world that I love." And she apparently gave Salma Hayek tons of stress. And Ridley Scott was who is infamously a dick. It's like, you're doing a little too much. I don't want you to traumatize yourself. Gaga's like, I already have. And so she's getting up at 3 a.m. She's vomiting when she wakes up. Anxiety, fatigue, trauma, exhaustion, commitment, love.
This doesn't sound like method acting. This sounds like she's doing something else.
How important is House of Gucci?
Sounds
What's
like
happening here? I mean, no disrespect to the great works of Alien and Prometheus, and I'm sure Ridley Scott. Gladiator. Hey, look, you know what? Gladiator. With all respect to everything Ridley Scott's done in the last 20 years, how important is House of Gucci? I don't know. Worth that?
Also, we should talk about Benedict Cumberbatch was also in the news recently for method acting.
Yeah,
is what they called it. He refused to speak to some of his co-stars, wouldn't bathe, and smoked hand-rolled cigarettes on set all the time. I guess that's...
This guy seems like he's having a depressive mental break. Like,
there are frankly a lot of people on Twitter method acting as total losers, and they're really, refuse to. Can you read that list again? Refuse to bathe.
Refused to bathe. Refused to speak to some of his co-stars.
No socialization.
Estranged from on the like in the movie.
Yeah.
And then also smoked hand-rolled cigarettes nonstop on
Estranged,
set.
estranged from everyone you love, smoking hand-rolled cigarettes, no taking baths. Yeah, just it
That
turns
might
out
be a
that just a lot of
convenience
America's
thing.
role playing.
That might be a convenience thing with the hand-rolled cigarettes. Just because like you don't want to leave set to go get a pack if you're gonna get called back in like 20 minutes.
No, he said it was for the bit, Joe.
He said it was for the bit.
He doesn't
Okay.
normally chain smoke hand rolled cigarettes all day. It's for the bit. He promises.
This really sounds like this guy was having a mental break or was trying to like. There's certain points in method acting where it's too much, and you're going past the character. You're creating something worse than this guy.
How much method acting is too much? Any amount.
I feel like
drop
any amount at this point.
Joe,
It's
drop some
traumatizing.
knowledge, drop some factual knowledge, and can you talk a little bit? You don't have to necessarily defend method acting, but explain method acting to an audience that just thinks of it as a weird thing that rich actors do.
Yeah, and if you do have like a good example of like method acting being an awesome thing, feel free to like,
Okay.
you know.
I mean, like, method acting is a training and rehearsal technique that is basically used to encourage this expressive performance that you are pulling out of yourself from your own experiences or your own emotions. Originally, like, from what I was taught, Stanislavski was one of the first, like, people to develop a system, or first practitioner really, to develop a system of training that was basically method acting. It was method acting, and it's really shown in his books, An Actor Prepares, which I'm still reading after all these years. And I remember reading Building a Character and it being very prevalent in a lot of the writing. From what I remember, it doesn't. There's a lesser version that was made by his nephew, I believe.
By lesser, do you mean like less good at getting to the heart of the character, or lesser like less stressful?
Lesser known. Like everybody knows Stanislavski. Nobody knows about. Not a lot of people know about his nephew, who basically took Stanislavski's idea and said, "You don't have to introduce the trauma. You can make up fake stuff to trick your brain into thinking that's happening. But then you got to remember and compartmentalize and bring yourself out of it, because after you put all your emotion into this stuff, that's the thing that Stanislavski really emphasized was you need to take yourself out of it. You need to remember to take yourself out of it, because if you go too much into it, you might drive yourself crazy. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but it feels like you can do a lot of damage with this style of acting. And I mean, there's a
It's
lot of
interesting
methods
'cause-
that aren't really great for actors. Like, it works for some people, it doesn't work for other people.
Yeah, it's interesting because I kind of see it as the other way around. Like, I think a lot of times when people get really into method acting, I'll keep putting quotes around it just to be a dick. Actually, this also kind of addresses this comment a little bit. That like, I think that like they are often like just kind of falling apart to some extent. Like a lot of method acting stories are like these people kind of going through a bad time in a lot of cases, And I'm trying to think of what's the star of There Will Be Blood?
Oh,
Daniel
Daniel
Day-Lewis.
Day-Lewis.
Yeah, he was famous for method acting, and now he mostly refuses to act and refers to most of his time acting as like a bad time. So, like, I think that's kind of interesting.
that's the whole thing with like another pretty famous method actor, Marlon Brando. He eventually hated acting. He didn't want to act anymore. He said, "I would rather be fishing." Does
Yeah.
that tell you anything about like method actors?
Well,
Probably
well-
not a great thing to follow in the footsteps of.
well, number one, greenhouse gaslighting. Avi mentioned, you know, how much is it of it is psychosis? How much is any art related to psychosis? Like, you know, if Lady Gaga is willing, an international celebrity is willing to have a real life nervous breakdown on camera for money, how right is it for us to judge her for being willing to do that? It's not like everybody is. And where do we draw the line between, hey, a person is willing to be extremely vulnerable on camera versus
Well, it's not just
how
that.
appropriate is it for an audience to cast that vulnerability as self-aggrandizement?
They are sharing their trauma with you as well.
Yeah, that's what I'm making the opposite argument now. I'm just saying, like, is it fair for us to judge, and where should we draw the line of judgment to, like, if you're sending someone dead rats or you're being standoffish to another actor, or like
Refusing to bathe is
I almost
definitely
fell.
where I draw the line.
yeah, where do we draw the line between extreme commitment to the craft or just doing things their own way to doing too much?
That guy is just crazy. He has a cult. Like, I can't make this clear enough. The guy is nuts.
Literal girls in white, hand-picked girls in white robes, like old-fashioned 1970s cult.
Reaching
Yeah.
out to him, like in multiple pictures where there's only 5 pictures of the entire event and there's thousands of people there. Or hundreds or whatever. I don't know how many people were there. It just looked like a lot of people and it was weird, and don't follow this man.
Really, where does method acting begin in being in a cult? In, you know, Jim Jones, maybe just method acting in the extreme. You don't know.
Oh, God. No. What have I done?
He was just preparing for a role. I just think that, like, to me, a lot of method actors, they come off like those CEOs, like Elon Musk, how he's like, I work 120 hours a week. Like, Elon Musk is a method actor. He thinks if he pretends to be an engineer for enough hours of the day, it makes him one.
Now, you make a good point.
I just
Now
think...
I'm wondering.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
You've got Joe questioning the entire validity of his trade now. Now we're wondering whether we should start a cult and or get into acting. Let me tell you, we started this show talking about alternate streams of income. We talked about, hey, look, actors, you've got to start mixing up where your revenue's coming from. Get together. Now, you can't get together and join SAG, but united, you can start a cult. Think about it. And your producers can join too.
I'm a method TikToker.
That's right.
I don't just dance to this NSYNC song in the video. I also listen to NSYNC all day. I've put up NSYNC posters in my room. I downloaded a virtual reality simulator of an NSYNC concert, and I go to it every night wearing a real NSYNC t-shirt that I bought off of eBay from the 90s. It smells like the 90s.
You're fair, Steve. You're right. You're valid. Let's get in. Income streams are everywhere. You just got to pick the one that's right for you.
Do y'all wanna wrap soon, or do you want to take another break and then talk a little bit of maybe JoJo's Bizarre Adventure?
No, we should save that for tomorrow because
Save
we
that for
stopped
tomorrow?
on a strong point.
We're stopping
This
on.
is a-
Yeah, okay. Well,
Yeah, this
and that'll also keep people excited because we're gonna have a fun conversation about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, some of the storytelling aspects that make it unique. Joe and I both love this show, and we're excited to talk about it.
For some reason, I just can't get away from it. It's like it's
inescapable.
so entertaining, and it's not hard to follow.
So tomorrow,
so-
do JoJo.
yeah. Oh, we're literally doing the JoJo right now. I wish I could play Roundabout, but instead you're just gonna get our outro music. We'll see you next time.
Bye bye.